All right, welcome to Salomon Ludwin's first fraud prevention fireside chat. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dalal Salomon, and I'm really happy that you all came today. I think this is going to be a really important event. The world has changed so much recently, and for the advancements that have been made by the bad actors out there in regard to identity theft and cyber crime has been really intensified. I think probably everyone in this room has felt this and have experienced some of it. My hope is that today's discussion will provide you with the awareness to be vigilant and to protect yourselves. With us today is our Schwab Relationship Manager, Arun Murthy. Where are you? In the back there. His colleague, Lauren Martin, is here, along with our special guest, Paige Adlington, who is the Schwab Senior Manager in the Business Consulting and Education Group. Paige, if you'll just tell us a little bit about your role at Schwab and then kind of the format for today's chat.
Yeah. So can you hear me okay? I don't want to purpose full screen at the same time. So I am dedicated to the firm, actually. I am a technology consultant, so I partner with the territories and support the larger and more complicated firms at Schwab on technology initiatives. So just a bit of an elevator speech. I help clients with advisors with client journey mapping. I do AI consulting with firms, so that's a hot button. You can ask questions about that as well. I help with technology evaluations. I'm just a thought partner with the firms. And one thing that I do a lot of work with advisors is helping them build their cybersecurity program. So I do a lot of speaking, but I also am involved in the day-to-day, like building out best practices and helping folks understand really how to live safely. I've been with Schwab for 10 years. Before that, I've always been in consulting and technology. I was originally an accountant, so some people they see why I still use a pencil when I take notes. It's because of that. And yeah, I just love doing these events. I always encourage you, ask any question. This is a fireside chat. I always recommend it this way to ask questions. We have some questions to get us started, but this is about answering what questions you have. And I will do my best to answer your question. If I don't know, I'll go find out and come back. But I can touch on things, just what I'm seeing in the industry. I can touch on fraud, best practices. If you had something specific happen and want to ask me about that, I'm happy to answer any and all questions.
Awesome. Let's get started. So we did have a few people send in questions. So the first one was, what are the most common fraud techniques?
So I will say that email fraud by far is the biggest threat to our industry. It continues to be. We actually call it cyber public enemy number one. So specifically to what we would call successful fraud at Schwab, and this really goes across the industry, almost everything can be traced back to a compromised email account. And so you can think of tactics like jumping into your email, initiating money movements, or perhaps a transaction like a purchase of a home, a car, a trip. Fraudsters will live in your email for months, sometimes even a year at a time. And track down and keep information and then use that to go out and commit fraud against you. So that's why we say that protecting your email and having really unique passwords, and we can touch all that, but it really is, email continues to be, and that's even with all the new AI stuff and everybody's all freaked out about AI and how that's going to be the next evil thing. It doesn't need to be, because compromising email still works.
So Paige, you said that they can live in your email account for up to a year. What can people do to check their email accounts and make sure there isn't anything going on there that they're not aware of?
The best thing you can do to start with an already established account is think about investing in different kind of antivirus software. A lot of the new programs, whether you're using like an Apple device or you're using an Android, so we can just even think our phone emails and that type of stuff, you can turn on settings to actually monitor and go look for bad actors in your email. sometimes you might notice something's weird in your email. And one thing I do say is always go and change your password when you see anything like that, or somebody tells you, hey, you sent me a weird email. That happens a lot, then you immediately need to go change things. But good antivirus software that's out there in the market will go a long way to protecting your email. But I also recommend you just should never, and I am black and white about some things. I do think we mostly live in the gray in our world, and trying to make life easy, but not, over engineered. But I would never send anything confidential. I would never send a tax form. I would never send an application. I would never send I would never send anything that had any identifying information through my email. It is, if you think about even 15 years ago when you sent a tax statement, it's still there. If you have that same email account, if a fraudster breaks into your email right now, they can go find that from 15 years ago. So there's a good chance of like cleaning up, but go forward. I just recommend never sending anything email that has any type of information like that. Always go to a source and think about a portal or secure ways to deliver private information.
One of the questions is I often receive notifications from various corporations stating that my private information has been compromised. How serious is this damage?
Oh, well, this is a challenging one. I would first say that sadly, you should already make the assumption that everything about you is out there. So I see a few shaking heads, but yes, it is the amount of information that we have, used over our lifetimes. And I mean, it's inevitable that something's out there, and that is sad. And so you almost have to go at it with assuming that your information's out there and like protect and guard the way you can. So thinking about protecting your credit and all those types of things. But when it comes to getting a notice specifically of a breach, I do say always, if they offer up the protection like credit monitoring and stuff, take advantage of it. I do it personally in my own life, just automatically. People ask what do you use. I do. I don't necessarily make it a recommendation, but I use LifeLock just because it is something that I can manage and it's one I like. But take advantage of them offering you credit monitoring and those types of things. But by and large, if you hear about things like on the dark web and that's where your profile is and people go out and buy stuff, by and large, somebody in what I would consider a wealthy category, just to be blunt, that's why we're kind of all here today, is your complete profile can go for about $125, like social security number, tax records, you name it. Somebody that we would call like a ultra, we're talking, I'm thinking of the SpaceX new billionaires that are out there. They cost maybe $2,000 to get a complete profile that's been dug up on them. So, it's really hard to say. There's lots of things you can do when you get that notice. Really what it is okay, maybe if, I think like I was part of an AT&T one a couple years ago, and I had lots of conversations with folks. Well, I made sure I went and changed my passwords that were associated, were like with my AT&T account. The credit card, for instance, that I was using to pay my AT&T bills, I had that card replaced with a new one. So those numbers, have they been compromised, could not be used somewhere else, like my credit card numbers. So if you get a serious notification of something like that, where your social security number or a credit card, those types of things have been compromised, that's the time to take action. But if you get a notification like, emails and phone numbers got out, honestly, I mean, it's just out there. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. It's just, it's the way information is getting out these days. So you do have to, but I do highly recommend if it's a type of account that has sensitive information like credit card or financial stuff, that you can go and change some of that information or excuse me, my voice a little bit, and change that.
How effective is it to lock the credit in the 3 credit bureaus?
Very. It is very effective. It can be a nuisance to us as individuals, but I'm also not buying a car or a house every day, so it's not that much of an inconvenience if you think about what you use it for in your daily lives. It's not typically activities that would need to check your credit, but it's very effective. I've had questions over the years about people saying that somebody's, gone and bought a home out from under somebody, and they found out that they went to do something and somehow somebody's gotten a mortgage on their house. Weird scenarios. But locking down your credit effectively does that. It does not allow a credit agency to clear reports. And that's even like if you're trying to get new electricity in Texas, we're deregulated. So every year I change my electricity because I'm bargaining it down. But they check my credit. So I go and unlock it for like 3 days. And I go and figure out which company I want. I apply and I lock it straight back down. So it's an extremely effective and easy and inexpensive just way to just stop that in its tracks. And I always also encourage people, like your family members, to do it too. I did it immediately when my son was born, and he's 20 now. And this is before I did cyber actually, but as soon as he got a social security number, I logged down his card in about 3 months, his number. So even when which he thankfully doesn't want credit yet, but even if he needs it, I have to unlock his and lock it back up. So I even encourage like sharing with family members, grandchildren, great grandchildren, lock down credit. They don't need it. So yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by locking it up? What effectively are you doing?
Yeah. So when you lock your credit, you go to the individual agencies, or sometimes if you have a service, they can do it for you if you're already involved in like maybe a LifeLock, some of those will do it on your behalf. And what they do is essentially your credit profile. So when you're going to go buy a house or something and they're pulling up what your credit report is, if anybody is going to extend credit to you, they go and pull that report. When you lock down the credit, you effectively make it impossible to get that credit report. It's almost like it is blocked, and any individual agency that's looking or requesting your credit will know immediately what's going on. And also a fraudster. If a fraudster tries to do something and they get that warning, then they also know potentially that they've been caught. They're trying to do something nefarious, but it just literally blocks it from being used. And so nobody's going to offer you a house without knowing what your credit is. Did that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the same kind of terminology where they use it with the same freeze your credit?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The question was that the same terminology saying freeze your credit. And yes, it's the same concepts.
Question about you're talking about data breaches.
Mhm.
I already have credit monitoring service set up, but then over the past couple of years, I know I've got at least 3 data breach notifications offering me free credit monitoring, that sort of thing. And it's always like a hospital, the information or medical office. But my question is, every time you sign up for one of these companies, it's a different one, and you're putting your information out there once again, because Experian had a data breach.
Yes, they did.
And they're credit monitoring, so I don't know how you resolve that.
Sadly, that loop can't be totally resolved. There is no silver bullet to this problem. If I don't really take advantage of the ones that they offer me simply because I have one that I pay for that just does it automatically. So if you do that, you don't have to, you don't have to engage another firm. It's not you're not all of a sudden by having 3 firms monitor your credit, are you going to get a better result? Like one is good enough. So it's more of those, if you've never done it, somebody offers, take it. I like to kind of own the process myself and have one that I pay for. And I don't know, that gives me some little extra boost of confidence that I'm managing the process. But there's, with that loop of your data being shared, it is just that. I mean, I say that you can do all of those things and really protecting yourself. Back to my point, it's no one thing is going to quote unquote save you. It is literally what I call like building a firewall around your life. So I use it like, I'll use my techie term a little bit. So like firewalls are like creating boundaries or restrictions to getting to full access to you. So if you think about having robust passwords and usernames, that's one type of firewall. If you think about using multi-factor, 2-factor, where they say, hey, text us back, that's like another firewall protecting your credit and so on. So no one item is going to keep fraud from happening. What you hope is that you build this constant sort of barrier around you that you can continuously or hopefully update when something happens, and that overall it's giving you better protection. Does that kind of resonate?
So what does
a service such as LifeLock,
Mhm.
what does that do for you versus you going into the credit bureaus, agencies yourself, and locking up your credit?
Well, in and of itself, if that's the only service you're trying to accomplish, in other words, if you're only trying to lock or freeze your credit, there really is no differentiation. The differentiation is the services that LifeLock as an application or a service can provide. So beyond just helping you freeze your credit, they can also offer you like ways to manage passwords. They can, it's almost like more service. They also, believe it or not, if you've ever seen, they also offer like VPN services, which is virtual private network, which has to do with how we can communicate on the internet and locking down transmissions. So it's more about the other services that they offer, where you're getting like a package of things. That doesn't mean if you're only looking to go freeze your credit, you couldn't go to just the credit agencies and do that. But the credit agencies are not going to offer you the other stuff. So it's kind of like how much of a service do you want? How much of a provider? That's why LifeLock is one that I like just because it has multiple services and I can use it for my family in total. So I don't have to have, like my son doesn't have to one and I help my parents and the whole thing. That's simply the differentiation.
Okay, and then you had mentioned about passwords. I know there's a lot of programs out there that will store your passwords for you. They say they're secure to use, so you don't have to remember all these passwords that you've set up. How do you feel about those services?
We're actually big fans and do recommend password managers. So the question is about the services or the applications that'll manage all your passwords in one place. And so you kind of have a keyword to get in. I mean, those are password managers. And we are, when I say our, my team and just, in general, cyber recommendations is they are a good tool. Some things when I talk about password managers to think about, never use a free version. In fact, I will say in almost anything in your life, never use the free version. Just never use the free version. I say that, and having a software background myself, a free version, when you're the free version, you're the beta group. So it's like, hey, we want to see how many people that are using the free version get broken into, because now we know what to go code to help our paying customers. Think about it like that. So I do say when you're, thinking about using things, and I will tell you this definitely applies now for anybody who's using AI. And when I'm talking about like chat and Gemini, don't use the free version. Go pay the $120 a year. You automatically, by default, when you pay for a version, are getting better security. So now back to password managers, definitely license one. So that means pay for the service a year if you're doing this. People ask about the technology that sits behind them and one has been compromised at some point, but beyond the first layer of encryption, and so hang with me here on the tech side. So you create a front end, very complicated like login. And behind the scenes, it is then creating very unique and complicated passwords for all of these websites that you're using. But beyond that, it has levels of encryption. So when I talk about these firewalls, even those applications build multiple firewalls so that even the one instance where one of those was compromised, it never got past the first firewall. In other words, it never got to the unencrypted data, which is your actual passwords and usernames that would have compromised an individual. It was like one of their front end layers. Does that make sense how I'm describing it? So yes, they are a great tool, and people get really worried about, oh my gosh, it's in one place. What happens? This one. But they also have they have configurations, so you could share it with another person. So you give another person authorization to know that, or have their own unique key to do that. If that worries you, you could even use it as more like a trusted contact, so that if something were to happen to you, I hate using the terminology like this, but you can actually have an inheritance factor in these password managers now, so that you could designate a person who can get into all of your accounts. So I have this for my parents. One, because my dad has a book, he's 89 and still writes everything in his book, and it makes me a nervous wreck. But, I kind of want to know if something were to happen, knock on wood, dad still comes over for coffee 2 days a week, that I would be able to access his information. So I don't do that on a daily basis, but if something were to happen, I know I have access to that. So it's kind of an inheritance thing if you're worried about people being able to use it. And they're not super easy to set up. I will not like misguide you and say this is like something really easy. It takes some work. It may even, you know, if you like technology, you might be great at going out and doing it. You know, oftentimes I help teach my friends, you know, and even people I work with how to use them. So it is worth the time. But then I say, if you're not going to use it the right way, like with all technology, I'm like, then don't go do it. That means go and create really strong usernames and passwords that are unique for each of those accounts. If you can manage it better that way, then do that. If using a password manager means you've over-engineered your life and you will throw your hands up, then don't go do that. You know, there's like this balancing act. I'm really big on this balancing. But if you're not going to use one of those, then I better not see the same username and password used at more than one location.
Quick question about the password managers. Or you were saying, don't use one that's free, like on your iPhone, there's a password manager. Is that considered acceptable?
I don't know how much you pay for your last iPhone, but it is not free.
Point taken.
Yeah. You are definitely paying for it, and those are safe. People ask me all the time about Passkey and their iPhones, and you know, and even like Google chain, and essentially that terminology is called it's your chain, it's your key chain of passwords, and those just by default, how you're setting them up on your phone and how they're managing them is safe because you got to use your face to open it up. They're encrypting data in the background so people can get a hold of those passwords. So yes, those are safe, and by default, you are paying for them. Not implicitly, let's put it that way.
Good question.
When you say free version password, there are apps that's free for you, but also you can pay more for more service, like LastPass.
Yes,
They have a free version. I use that to generate very complicated passwords, but you're saying it's not good enough.
This is definitely a personal preference. From a technology standpoint, we would say we prefer you to go and get even the lowest amount because you do get added security. The password manager is tricky because default it's creating these really, complicated passwords. I just know from the industry that free versions are often where they do a lot of testing and they try to find what's called like a 0 day. And that 0 day is like, where's the hole that we need to go patch? And so to me, it is worth that $100 a year, whatever, to know that I'm getting an extra layer of security and effectively playing in a different sandbox. So if you've ever heard that terminology, like that, how they're like testing in a sandbox, like free versions tend to be in one sandbox and paid versions tend to be in another. And so I'm not saying that it's unsafe. It's just the cost benefit is there for me to go pay that extra amount. Now, there might be a breaking point where I'm not going to pay $2,000 for it. No, I wouldn't. I'd go with the free version, or I'd go find something, or I'd go bargain if I could. But it's just one of those to kind of weigh it and see if it's worth it. But I do try to recommend not using. Now, Spotify, if you want to use Spotify for free, the Spotify version or those kind of things, yeah, that's fine if you don't mind the ads. But I'm talking about things related to kind of your security.
Yes, can you talk a little bit about email? A lot of us have had email addresses. What are your recommendations for maybe is that a good thing to do? Have different email addresses.
Okay. So his question was, a lot of us have had emails for a very, very long time, and essentially, should you change that or divide it up? And one, keep your email address. I mean, if you've got a lot of things attached to it, I do. Maybe a caveat is if you have an AOL, I might think about creating a new email address if you're still living in the AOL world. It does exist, and I'm not even relating it to age, and I'm not even going to say my own age, but I had mine back in the day. But there's a good opportunity when you think about email. You don't only have to have one email. You can have multiple emails, and you can set them up on your phone. The example is I have one email that's kind of, sort of my general email. It can contain some of what I call important stuff, but it has a lot more of like, hey, your electricity bills due. And then I have another email that is almost like secret, and I only use that for very important communications, even though I don't send confidential documents in there, it's kind of allocated for more unique things and things I want to save. Things like related to my, like really important, like my son's college tuition. Like I don't want to miss that email. So it goes to that email box. But then I have one that is almost like the trash. And that's when, hey, if you're, I'm at the state fair and like, give us your email and you can spin the wheel for like, free barbecue or something like that. Which I'm notorious for trying to get something for free. I'll use that email. Because, it's kind of like, I call it the trash email, but where you can get promotional items. So, to his point, you can think about email as separating it out where you want something to kind of have where it's not clouding your email, and there's nothing wrong with that. I still say keep them all safe, but I honestly wouldn't care if the barbecue place at the Texas State Fair sold my information to some like cookbook shop. I'm like, fine, have at it. Spam that email all you want. I don't care about it.
Is there an easy way to tell the 2,000 people you've got in your database new email address? Because I can do it one by one at a time.
Oh,
Or mass email, whatnot, blind email.
really not. If I were saying, if I took it like a project manager, if I put my project manager hat on and say, I would probably look at that list of 2,000 contacts and prioritize, much like almost anything, so, the 500 people that I had in there that are just over the years of like coming in contact with, because they're in my Christmas card list. Don't really care if they get my new email, but the 100 that are important, that are my best friends, potentially my advisor, my CPA, maybe there's an opportunity to do that there, but you don't have to necessarily take it in one chunk. A good example is I'm notorious for, I use a credit card where I'm earning Marriott points because I'm a Marriott girl. And then I'll feel like, oh, I've got too many Marriott points. And then I want to go back to my American Airlines card, to get those. So I have to like mentally go and switch things. But I make a list and I say, oh, I really care about switching these over. So think of it, if you wanted to switch emails, the next time you go visit, let's say you go have a meeting with your CPA, say, hey, I'm changing, can you do this email? So I say, break it up into work, prioritize the ones that really you need to change or you want to create a new email, but you don't have to do all of them. You could do a mass email, but probably somebody might delete it thinking it's spam. But you could try.
What actually happens when you unsubscribe to the email? I've heard, that it's better to just, delete it, because a lot of times you'll unsubscribe and it'll have you put your email in there.
Yes. Typically, I say don't check the unsubscribe button in the body of an email. So when you get an email from some organization that or something you've signed up for, or maybe your list got sold and suddenly you're on a list, you will see down there's an unsubscribe button. We do say don't click that because it could actually be malware, like trying to jump into your system or compromise your email. So don't click that. Oftentimes you can go to the website if it's a reputable company. So if it's a reputable company and you go to a reputable website, they often have a way to unsubscribe there that is safe. But by and large, I recommend just categorizing it if you're like on your iPhone or you're in your email system as trash or junk. And then it typically will block it going forward from that. So it's better almost to like move it into your junk folder if you're working on your phone. You can say, mark this as spam, that type of thing. It's better to do that than to click anything in the body of the email.
Does that apply to a computer as well?
Yes. Preferentially, yes. The risk is lower there, but we have seen it happen. That somebody is using like malware to, when you click that button, all of a sudden they've installed in your system and you don't know it. That's rare now. And a lot of times it's just because they're going and using other tactics, but I wouldn't click in the body of an email. I've recently got more of a question. If you see I noticed this particularly on my iPhone, that it'll, on its own, when you open up an email, it'll have a button at the top that says, we can tell that this is from a mailing list. Do you want to unsubscribe? And it gives you like a notification. That is safe because that's part of the software. That's part of like that security that you're paying for. So if it's popping up as part of the phone or the system you're using, it's because they're managing. They're saying, hey, we see this is coming from a list and we can facilitate unsubscribing for you in a safe way. And so you could take advantage of that.
Along these lines, I know there are third party, email unsubscribe services. What are your thoughts on this? Because I read good and bad things. It seems like even though once they go through their scour, ultimately they don't do it every 3 months, that the email start coming back. So I'm trying to cut down on all that junk email.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, if the question was, there are services that will kind of scrub your basically marketing list to get you off marketing lists and unsubscribe. And that is an option, but it will keep coming back just from your life in different breaches. They can do it one time, but it's if you're paying for a service and they're doing it automatically. And I think some of these services might get cheaper because honestly, they're going to use AI to do this. It's not people doing it. It's AI that's doing it in the background. Then that's an option. And it's almost going to be part of a package like with LifeLock. Hey, we see you on these, you want us to take care of getting you off these mailing lists. I don't say don't do it, but I would pay a lot of money for it. I don't think it's worth like paying an exorbitant amount or even a substantial amount to have somebody do it every 3 months, because I think you end up right back on them. And honestly, a lot of times you don't even realize that just by say buying something somewhere automatically means you've opted in to being sold. Almost anytime you buy anything on the internet, you are automatically opting in to being sold, your data being sold.
Are and blockers safe?
Yes, I use anything I possibly can that's available to block calls, spam. Or if you have a service provider that, like AT&T is supposed to do it, I'm totally not beating up on AT&T, although they are irritating me right now. But that they will block numbers. I mean, almost all of the services kind of have something like that. If you have Gmail, Google has some really good tools to help you block in your Gmail accounts and different things. So sometimes you have to do some research. So you might want to look up, hey, what can I do to eliminate some of this? Oftentimes it's not by default. So just by say going and getting a specific new email account, it's going to put all these security measures. In fact, it's almost always the opposite way. You have to opt in versus what I say opting out of the technology. So a little bit of research there is a good idea just to figure out how they might not be able to put some less. I still have to go research. I'm like, has AT&T come up with something new? Or, has my iPhone got a new piece? We get updates all the time. And it's like reading technical specs to figure out what's this update going to do for me this time and what's it going to change. And I just start looking up. Hey, I ask people on the internet the same thing. What's it doing this right now? Is it going to change? So it does require a little bit of research, but there are better tools that can help you in each of those applications.
Is it terrible to use
No. Oh, sorry. Yes. Is it bad to use your name as part of your email address? And I say no. Your name's out there. I will tell you almost every corporation in America uses your name as their email address. And so although that is an identifying piece of information, if somebody's trying to crack into your email, having your email is not really a big deal. It's your password and how they authenticate to get in. So no, I don't think that that's a really big deal. I think almost the whole universe uses names. If you felt more comfortable making it something different that wouldn't identify you, then I say go for it. I know that like at Schwab, it's no big secret. Schwab, every email is first name dot last name at Schwab. So if somebody really wanted to, find out, they'd see me somewhere and said, oh, I want to go as page for a job. They could just guess what my email was. But does that mean a whole lot? They're not getting into my email. So it might help you with spam, but like if you use that new, unique, non-name email and did 3 things on the internet, bought something, it'll be on a marketing list and you get stuff with it.
Paige, when you do multi-factor authorization for passwords, I think you should never have that code go to your email. Because if email is the most compromised place, and people are in there and you're sending a code to your email address, that's a problem. We had a client recently that had her email compromised and all her codes were going to email accounts, so they were then able to get into things. So is that a good?
It is, that's a challenging one, yes. A lot of times unfortunately, you don't have a choice because it's the service provider that's dictating how you authenticate. But I would say that when you sign up for an account like your bank or whatever, it is preferential that you use. So I'll take a step back. What she's talking about is two-factor, multi-factor. So just to clarify, when you go and log into something on your phone or on a website and it says we want to make sure it's you, even though you've given us your username and password, we want to multi-factor authenticate you or dual. And that's where they say, hey, give us this code. We're going to send a code to your phone and you need to type in the code. Or we're going to send a code to your email. You need to type in. So it's like that next layer. It is preferential for it to go to your phone. That code to go to your phone, which you typically have on hand. It's harder to get access to. But sometimes you don't have a choice and it's going to go to your email. There is the risk there is lower than some other things because of just if you had, I don't want to delve into that specific thing, but having a really unique password would have been a guard to then even somebody being in your email in the first place. So once again, these kind of layers. If you have an option, choose to authenticate on your phone. By a code on your phone, not through email. It just happened to me the other day that I had to do it through email, and it's actually kind of a pain when you're on your phone. So you got the thing right there, you're trying to go into your email. So if given a choice, authenticate on your phone, not via email. Oftentimes, also when you set up an account, you can designate the email you wanted to authenticate. So again, I said I have that super secret email. I use that as my recovery email and I try to make it my authentication email. So it's not going to what I would call that generic email. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on using the factor via text versus an authenticator app? Gives you a person text.
I actually think they're probably equally on par. And the question was, what was my thoughts on using an actual authenticator app versus, say, the one that comes with the application? You're talking like maybe, B of A or somebody sends you the code versus separate. I think they're equally good as long as you're using them and you're using it from a reputable site. I mean, in other words, B of A authenticating and sending you a text is safe to do it that way. If you want that extra layer, I don't see anything wrong with having a specific app that helps you manage that. That's just another piece of tech to manage. So I would say if you feel like having that extra level of confidence or that separate measure of authentication is something you can manage and you like it, then go for it. If you feel like it's something that would then sort of undermine how you're living your life, I would feel comfortable saying that the way they authenticate those websites do, you're safe.
Yeah, I was a little confused by something you said earlier.
Okay.
It's me. My impression was you were suggesting that if you're using the Apple Passkey program, that you don't need to do some unique application to manage your passwords.
If you have them all in one place, yes, because you are effectively using. So the question was that I kind of confused is talking about like the keychain in her iPhone, and that was saying, or Apple computer was saying that you didn't need to have a password manager. First, I got the question correct. Yes. So that keychain and that technology on your phone is effectively a password manager. So if that is the only place you're accessing, then I would say, yes, that is a safe way to use it. The caveat is if you then go to use your home computer or you were someplace else and you needed to log in and get to an account, you would not have that protection. It does not translate to your other devices. It is only on that device. So if you went and please don't do this. Don't log into the hotel computer to print off your boarding pass and use that password because somebody could be sitting in that computer and get your password. So it doesn't protect you when you go outside of that iPhone bubble. That's when you would sort of lose that protection. So that, if you were doing everything singularly in that phone, you would be safe, but anything outside of that, potentially swear you want.
Can you talk about passkeys a little bit? Like, I've been asked on, yeah, no, I think it's like my agency website, that you need a passkey now. And I'm not sure if I understand the difference between that and just using passwords. Now it does it automatically once I set it up. Anytime I log in there.
So if it's typically the passkey, when they're at websites and they're asking you for a passkey, it's another level. And it's almost encoded in an authenticated device. So this does feel a little techy. You can say that that scenario is safe that you're describing. So when people are creating these passkeys or this like multi-factor authentication, they're using a level of encryption that keeps people from watching what you're doing or getting to your data, like getting into things. So I believe in the scenario you're talking about, they're effectively creating that multi-factor for you. Now, if you went and tried to do that, say same thing, like I'll use the hotel computer. If you went and tried to do that at a hotel computer, it probably wouldn't work. You would have, it would say, we're going to send something to your phone. We don't recognize this. We don't believe it's you. And you have to go then authenticate multiple different ways. But if you're setting something up on a device and it's like recognizing that, it's like that multi-factor is being built in for you.
Okay.
Since everyone here has Schwab accounts, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing from a fraud standpoint at Schwab and what Schwab does to protect everybody's accounts.
So I would say that one, we partner very close with our advisors to kind of understand what's going on with them. I mean, some of the work that I do with the firm and other advisors is like employing best practices, you know, kind of teaching what to do, things like this. But at Schwab specifically, there, you know, I can't disclose everything, and I can't disclose it because I don't know everything because they don't want me to know everything. You know, it's kind of like that need to know. But there are multi-layers of protection going on behind your account. Different types of authentication, things you're not aware of to keep you safe. But the things that I do stress, and I try to make sure that our advisors are supported in this, is we absolutely say you have to have talked to your client. We will not take an email. We will not take somebody texted you anything. So I always say, hey, when you feel like I need to do this and I need to get this done fast, and your advisor or client service is like, well, I need to talk to you and I need to ask you some more questions. Don't get frustrated. They are doing it to protect you, but they're also doing it because we ask. Because we're not going to go and transfer $1.5 million to a house when nobody's called the title company and verified that somebody hasn't jumped in your email and redirected to a fraudulent title company. I see it all the time. I see it last week, a $4 million fraud on a home purchase because that specific client just really pushed to go ahead and move money to an account number, and it was a fraudulent account number that had been hacked into their email. So all of those types of questions and extra measures of protection are to protect you. It's really not to make your life inconvenient. You know, it's very dangerous territory, and I actually have. I do this a lot. I love getting in front of, you know, guys and talking about this, but I had a lovely woman at an event I did in St. Louis. She was on the front row and she said, I don't understand why they're coming after. Why would they come after me? And I was like, because y'all have money. I'm like, it's not much more complicated than that. Is, you know, they're going after where they can get money, and going after a big corporation is not where they're going to get money. They're going to get passwords, they're going to get intel or, you know, some secret sauce, but they're not going to get money out of a corporation. And that's what they want. That's why they go after us. So kind of that front, I'm always like, you know, just hang in there with what they're doing and the things that they recommend to protect you. Lots of stuff going on in the background at Schwab. On the fraud front, well, like I mentioned, almost as we kicked off today, email continues to be the number one area for fraud and how users are compromised, initiating money movements, and perhaps on the side of the advisor, it wasn't authenticated properly, a phone call wasn't made, if things like that, or accounts have been shifted, it all comes back to email. And I always say, just pick up the phone. It is so easy to just talk on the phone. And in fact, I joke that iPhone, the last thing we think about it is being, you know, a phone these days. It's like a little computer, but it's really easy to just pick up the phone and like call and talk and verify. And that is the number one thing. But there's a lot of fraud. I might also say when it comes to fraud, as soon as you believe you've been compromised, even if it doesn't involve your advisor specifically or a movement of money, it's important to let your advisor know. That means your email being compromised. It's important to let Schwab know because we can put safeguards in place for your account, like extra, like almost like red flag warnings. It's unlikely that a breach would happen, but that doesn't mean we don't want to be aware of it. We are real encourage people to have trusted contacts. That way, if something doesn't look right, your advisor notices, hey, it's just like something just doesn't seem right about this. And they can reach out to somebody else to make sure everything's okay. We have teams that can help with that. So I think, the real message I want to make sure people understand is like everything that gets asked, every area or firewall, even if it's a human firewall that we put in place and your advisors put in place, is to protect you, not to make life inconvenient. Because what's really inconvenient is if your email was compromised and 2 million went out of your account, it's on you.
But let me just say one thing. We are on constant high alert at Salomon and Ludwin in terms of protecting your information, protecting your accounts. I want to introduce you to Aline Bellamy. If you've not met her, she's our director of operations, and she probably attends a cybersecurity, cybercrime workshop or podcast or something every week. And our entire operations team is really working very hard. So if you do get a call from them or a request for more information or to confirm something, all these things really are being done to protect all of you. And I just want you to know that we are making this a top priority at our firm.
Scenario you described with the $4 million fraud, at what point is law enforcement notified?
Pretty quickly. Unfortunately, there's really not a lot they can do. So when you immediately come to us, if you weren't aware, Schwab can actually go after those funds. So let's say we have the potential to recover money. It's timing is it's very important when this important timing happens, where maybe somebody even when somebody gets caught in a scheme or a scam and money is moved, and it's moved legitimately in the sense that it was authenticated and people agreed to it, but in that instance, somebody realized I've been scammed. We can go after that bank. We can go after that money to try to recover it, working with law enforcement to recognize. But there is a period of time, and oftentimes what happens, and then it gets moved to a third party out of that account, and then it's gone. So from that standpoint, law authorities can get involved. And I do encourage people to report stuff. But the reality is there's not a whole lot that happens. It's a sad reality. This full scale and monumental volume of financial fraud that happens on a daily basis, it's impossible to track down. Now, they will use a lot of this information as statistics and how to maybe go after certain groups. So if you've ever seen on the news story, they're like, hey, we caught this specific group of fraudsters from a certain country. And that's the sheer volume of reports associated with that gave them a hint that they might go. So I do encourage reporting. But outside of like us looping in, and trying to get the money back, there's not a whole lot you can do. It's kind of like, if we think about just credit cards, when you see a fraudulent thing on your credit card and you're like, do you call the police and say, hey, somebody used my credit card at the gas station? No, we call a credit card. They take it off our account. We forget about it and they don't call police. They just put it in that bucket of, fraud. But we do try our best, but it is just, unfortunately, it's just the sheer volume that happens outside.
The 4 million. Exactly. What do they do there? Did the client call in and ask for money to be wired to an account that was illegitimate?
Yes.
And who gave her the illegitimate account?
Okay, so what happened in this scenario, and this is a common one that we see, this family, and this was a family, so you're thinking, I want a $4 million, I would love a $4 million house, but this was kind of a family purchase. And it was initiated as a legitimate purchase. So this was a legitimate purchase that was happening. but somebody had compromised that individual's email and watched as this transaction was taking place over months, knowing that they were purchasing a property, understanding that individuals involved, understanding the title company, the lawyers, you name it. Somebody in this chain was compromised and their email was compromised. It has been tied back. There's still investigations. There's lots of forensics, but it can also be your CPA could be compromised in this chain. A lawyer could be compromised in this chain. Once again, sharing confidential information. The advisor did the right thing and called and said, you know, are you really doing this transaction? Verified the name of the title company. But then the fraudster jumped in and changed the title company account number, so kept the same name, but sent the email back. And the individual user, I'm going to use the term forced, was absolute that the advisor not call the title company. And that title company the number had been changed. So it went to a title company that was called the same name, but the account number wasn't that title company. So did y'all follow the train of how that could happen? They'll forensically trying to figure out who in that chain was exactly compromised. You know, you could say that potentially the breakdown was, you know, the advisor could have been absolutely adamant, we won't do this without calling the title company. And I have seen that, and I've been happy when I've seen that. You kind of understand from a client service perspective the impact that may have, but they were doing the right, you know, they were just stopped from doing that. And, you know, so it's just kind of, once again, understanding how truly authenticating the entire process. I will say in this particular transaction, they were able to recover some of the funds, because what happens is it went to a particular account, but then it was quickly being divided up to multiple accounts to fly underneath the radar for other reporting purposes. So from a couple, they were able to get some of that money back, but there's a significant amount.
$50 the house anyway.
I don't know that part. I don't see that side. And that's kind of a need to know too, but yeah, it would be interesting to see how that played out. I bet the buyer wanted them, or the seller wanted them to.
I do have a question for Charles Schwab, because when I call, they want to verify it is me. They ask me some questions, but those questions are very generic questions. Your address, your phone number, or whatever. It's very generic. If people have my information, they'd be able to say, blah, blah, blah.
And so there's some other things that go on in the background around your voice and some other things that are happening. There are some knowledge-based questions that get asked that some people get very annoyed about. I don't know if anybody's been asked, what car did you have when you were 25? Or something along those lines, some weird questions. Yeah, exactly. So there's more going on, but I can't point to your exact scenario, so I don't want to kind of overstep my compliance boundaries. There's multiple things going on that would have before you even got to that point. But yes, there are certain profiles. They're going to ask questions. Some you're going to be aware of. Some they're going to have, for lack of a better word, a trick question in there that they know whether or not it's really you. But to that point, your address is your address. And those are still some of the things that now you could also say, and I'm not using your specific example, sometimes asking those things is like something that is just a check in the box, not necessarily that it's the verification that it's you. Does that make sense?
They keep asking for the first job and they don't like my answers.
Do they ask you those kind of questions? I know, we've heard that.
Do you fill out a form, like first car, where you were born? Do you fill this out when you do the Schwab application? That they have that stored.
There's actually databases out there that have a lot of identifying information on you. Some of it you may have filled out, and lots of places do. It's called knowledge-based questions. And so a lot of things are public record. Marriage, divorces, deaths, births, all that is public record. Let me start back here. He had no.
Annoying things for me is, are you a robot? And how effective is that drill you go through sometimes for minutes? Is that even, sometimes I just get off.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
I think it's moderately effective. So the question was, when you go to log in somewhere and it's like, check all the boxes that have a bicycle, to make sure you're not a robot. It's fairly effective still now. I will say that I have my own personal prediction that AI could potentially change that. And that has less to do with security. There's a partial bit of doing that kind of verification is security, making sure you're not a robot. But it also has to do with other things that they don't want their systems being compromised and like being spammed themselves. But for now, I would say that it is a step. It can be painful. Sometimes you can bypass that by doing other, say, you know, I've had it where I've messed it up and I'm like, I'm tired and it says authenticate a different way, then like go and authenticate the different way. And that usually is a phone call or, you know, them authenticating a different way if it's bugging you.
When I go to buy my next $4 million home, what? I'm gonna call y'all and ask you to wire money. And I'm gonna be given an account to wire money to. What else should we all do to ensure that that's a legitimate place it's going? Other than the people gave me the number.
You can call and verify that. So if you're working on that particular thing, calling the title company, or calling, you know, the where that is being and making them, and sometimes forcing. I have seen, you know, scenarios where the title company is like, we're not going to verify that. And then I've had an advisor say, well, then you're not getting the money and this is not going to happen. And we're going to go use somebody else. You know, you don't have to use that title company. You can say, we don't feel like you're acting in the best interest. So it is going and saying, repeat. It's not, hey, was this the account? It's like, what's the account number? You can verify the account number. You can verify all that data. So when it's something significant like that, you want to take it pretty seriously.
Okay.
Yeah, but yes, it can be done.
Thankfully, more often than not, we've got ACH account numbers for your banks. And when we're sending money, we know it's going directly to your bank
Yes.
account. And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, but I'm sending money out of my.
But if you're sending out, I think we all have to have this mindset of don't trust anything. Verify, verify, verify. Don't click on any links, right? Don't send confidential stuff through your email. Get LifeLock. These.
Password
credit.
Yeah, free
I mean, that's a super easy thing to do. And that will, I think, give you a really good protection.
One of the things that we've started doing is actually talking to the closing attorney and the title company to validate all the numbers with them, right? Because things can get lost in translation, right? That's where the risk is. And by having verbal authorization from both parties, that's as tight as you can close the loop.
That is the exact, I mean, once again, they're a firewall for you. They're trusted, you know, they are really working on your behalf to keep you safe. Back row, yes.
So those, we've had to sign things, I think it's called DocuSign. That's, I mean, we've been doing taxes and other things that way with our CPA. That's.
Simple answer, so safe. It's basically an encrypted portal. So DocuSign, I mean, Schwab uses DocuSign. It's a well-known platform. It's a licensed platform. The process they're going through to use that essentially keeps data safe and sort of in that bubble of authentication and encryption. So you think about if worst case somebody could get to it, it would be so jumbled that it would be ineffective. So that is a safe form of communication.
You just have to make sure it's a legitimate DocuSign.
Yes.
That's the caveat. On the front end.
Yes.
Easy way to know if it's
You're not expecting it.
Well, if you're not expecting it, and there should be a sender, I would call that sender. I mean, if you're not, you shouldn't be getting a DocuSign and not expecting it, first of all. So I wouldn't open it first. You know, so if you got a DocuSign and you weren't expecting something from Solomon, I would pick up the phone and call, did you send me a DocuSign? And it's a no. Same thing if you got something for Schwab or a bank or anything, you can call legit. That's one thing I really enforce is like, you can always call it and call the legitimate number. It's like one of these takeaways. If I could like say one little parting thing, it's like never respond to an incoming text, an incoming email, or an incoming phone call that you don't recognize. You know, there's no obligation on your part to action something based on those incoming methodologies. So if somebody texts you and says, we see fraud on your account, check yes or check no or anything, don't respond. turn over the credit card and call Chase directly. If you get a phone call, we're from Chase, we suspect fraud on your account. I would like love to just like mess with these guys when they call me and, you know, go down a rabbit hole, like just totally nerd out on them to get them frustrated. Like, why do you need this? And, you know, I'm going to call the legitimate number. No, you don't need to call that number. Just ignore it. You don't have to action that incoming email or that incoming phone call. You know, say, okay, if I have fraud, I'm going to call the legitimate number and I'll take care of it. If they say, okay, we understand, then you know it's probably legitimate, but still call a legitimate number. If they start arguing with you, you know immediately you're being targeted for fraud. But that's just one thing. You don't have to action that. Just go to the legitimate website, go to the legitimate phone number, you know, go to the legitimate website and action from there.
If on your computer, you get some ridiculous email or something, you know, all of a sudden, you know, this thing's blaring out at you, you know, your system is locked, you can't get, you know, whatever this is. I don't know if that's described as malware, but I can usually get rid of it. Well, I can always get rid of it. But the question is, does that mean there's something on my computer that is going to continue to come up periodically? And if so, where do I take my computer that I know it's going to be safe to have somebody look at?
So the question was, if you've got an email and it's got the red flags, you've been compromised, I would, and what you do, how to move forward from there. Most of the time in that scenario, it's probably a phishing attempt to get you to click on something. So in and of itself, the email is most likely not the fraud, or it's not the bad actor getting into your email. They're wanting you to click something, and that clicking is what gets them into your email. So don't click. You can put it into the trash. You can quarantine. You can do some things to that specific email. But I would take a step back and make sure that you have really good antivirus software on your computer. There's lots of them out there. I'll just say like Bitdefender. There, I mean, there's several. There's really great ones. Once again, don't use a free version. And that will stop some of that type of email even getting to you in the first place. So you kind of want to block it as much as you can ahead of time. Don't action the email. Yes, dump it. If you feel like your actual computer has been like it's acting funky and like it's going slow, and I mean, I have to do this every so often with my parents' computer because I feel like my mom's just putting on stuff. I can take it and kind of clean it up by a series of things. If you're not comfortable with doing that, if you have an Apple, go to the app or a Mac of some kind. I mean, ask the Apple store. Like, it's worth taking a visit saying, I feel like something's wrong on this computer. Can somebody help me? Some of these places that say, can you help clean up my computer, like the Geek Squad, and there are some reputable people that will help you clean it up. But a lot of times, if you just have that antivirus software on your computer to begin with, it does a lot these days to help keep your computer clean. And so that's another thing to point out, is make sure all that stuff's up to date. Like if you have a PC, make sure your Windows application is up to date and updates have been done, because that's really what they're doing is providing those patches for security. Same thing on your iPhone and your MacBook. The reason they give you an update isn't because they want you to get a new emoji. The reason you really get an update is because they have found a security flaw, most likely. And so they're going in to do an update to patch that security flaw, but then at the same time, they're going to give you some other widgets to make it fun.
Is there a particular antiviral software that you recommend for Macs?
I personally use Bitdefender. I don't know that I would call that a recommendation. There are so many good ones out there these days. So that's kind of one of those. Encourage, if you have a relative, if you have a son, a daughter, a grandchild, a spouse that uses one, ask them. Like, the best thing you can do is maybe ask somebody you know, and they know how to set it up and use it robustly, and then they can teach you. I mean, it could be as simple as that. It's, there's so many great ones out there. So you can do a little research, but at the same time, if you know somebody that's a tech, you say, hey, what do you use? Can you help me set it up and show me how to do it? That's probably the path of least resistance if you're unsure.
Thank you.
All right, Paige, thank you so much for coming all the way from Texas.